Come, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters. And you that have no money, come, buy and eat. Why do you spend your money for that which is not bread? And why do you labor for that which does not satisfy? Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. Let the wicked forsake their way, and the unrighteous their thoughts. And let them return to the Lord, that he may have mercy on them, and to our God, for he will abundantly pardon.
It's true, the stories they tell you. They said there's no way they would go. I know, just look at me here too. 9,000 miles from home. Don't seek escape, I hear them say. It's my heart, it breaks in pieces, my soul. Found its meaning right here with you tonight. My fear replaced its motive, my hope is overflowing right here with you tonight. I see roll like ocean billows, the tears mothers before help. I hear the hopeful song of widows. Feel my cold heart melt. I think I know why you said go. Is my heart, it breaks in pieces, my soul found its meaning right here with you tonight. My fear replaced its motive, my hope is overflowing right here with you tonight. Oh, my heart, it
All right. Welcome back from a long time ago when we used to do the Solomon Report weekly. But here we are back, I don't know, a couple months later. Welcome back, Mr. NPC 3.14.
Why, hello, Aaron. It's nice to be back. Shabbat shalom.
Yes, Shabbat Shalom. And you've got, as always, a plethora of information, but we should probably go through a little bit of updates because it has been a while since we've been around. You've been going on other platforms, have you not?
Yeah, I have a circle of friends known as the Weaving Spiders Welcome, and met a lot of folks on there, and there's a lot of interesting minds that I've been collaborating with and spreading the gospel. And yeah, I've done some podcasts on Ragnarok and Revelation, Giants, a few other topics like we covered I Pet Goat in thorough detail. That was on the Interverse with Chance Garton. So yeah, a few here and there. It's hard to remember all of them, but yeah, it's nice because it's given me the opportunity to share a biblical perspective on a lot of these topics and in circles where people may have not got the chance to hear the gospel. So that's a real pleasure. Anyway, today we're going to be covering the Queen. So I didn't want to get ahead of us, but did you have some announcements?
The only announcements I would have is, well, I've been gone for a while off of YouTube. Part of that has just been a little bit of, they've gotten me down, man. Losing my big channel, it did get me down, but that's okay because we are still here, and I'm really happy to see you, Marie. I'm glad you're here, and NBD 200. To anyone who's here watching live, we really appreciate it. And while I have some bigger news about kind of what's going on in my life, maybe down the road, today isn't the day because we got only limited time, but I have started my own business that is very, very busy, which is such a blessing. But I went out, so quick update on that. I went out and started doing my own landscaping and house cleaning business, and I have posted a few of those landscaping videos, but I am getting calls almost every day and getting booked to do something. And so while it's a lot of hard work, it's been very rewarding. And at the end of the day, and I don't mean at the end of the day like the old saying, I mean literally when the day is over, I'm so exhausted that I can't even imagine doing a live video. So that's kind of a big part of why I haven't been going live. So I'm glad we made this time, and I'm glad we're back to it.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it's just like anything. You wait for the perfect time, and the time never comes. You have to just make the time sometimes, or oftentimes, actually, because life will get in the way. Of course, we do value family here, and so as such, that's why we're doing it a little earlier, because we wanted to make sure that you guys could do your, what, you got a sporting event later?
No, my daughters go over to grandma and grandpa's house tonight, and then in the morning I'm going to do a big house cleaning, which is great because they'll be with grandma and grandpa, and I'm cleaning the house for a move-in and potentially several $100s. So I'm pretty excited about that. So it's best if they're just with grandma and grandpa. I don't have to worry about them being home alone. So that's it. There's no sports tonight. But yes, that's another thing is you bring that up. We are doing cross country and swimming. And it's crazy. So we're very busy.
Well, I'm glad that they're active. It's important. Idle hands are the devil's workshop, as they say. And working with families and children, what I've learned is if they don't have something to distract them, they'll usually get into trouble somehow. So it's important to keep them preoccupied.
And I love how tired it makes them. They go to bed early. So, all right, back to you.
Yes, it does indeed make them go to bed, because that's another one of the big problems with the work is that they don't want to go to bed and then they don't go to school the next day. Anyway, I'm glad those days are over for me when I don't have to go to school anymore. I can't imagine having to do that now. All right, so without further delay, I'll go ahead and start dropping some of these links in the chat. I've also dropped a few links to the Telegram channels I mentioned, so you can check those folks out. That's the Interverse podcast with Chance Garton, and the Spiders Welcome Web is actually for Weaving Spiders Welcome. So if you like art and those sorts of things, it's kind of like a lot of folks collaborating. And you'll find both of them on Wednesday nights, and I think the Spiders will have a stream tonight, actually. So, and we do have our own Telegram as well, Solomon Report Chat. So we drop all the links there for the Solomon Report, and I have made a Discord, but it's not quite ready for sharing yet. So we'll just use Telegram for Meow. And yeah, okay, so the Chabad.org link here has been shared. So that's for today, September 10th. This is my brother's birthday. So if you're listening, Jer, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
So to save a little bit of time here, we'll not read all of this as much depth as we would normally have read it. So we might even be a little bit under 2 hours today. But we have a lot of other stuff here to go over. So here, we'll go ahead and at least share what the Torah portions and Tehillum are. Again, the Psalms would be the Tehillum. So right here, chapter 72 through 76. So let's go ahead and open that, and I'll copy the link for you so you can follow along on your own device. Okay. Yeah, man. Silver. Yeah. Like I'm reading here, Angel Place talking about getting back in with this silver and such.
Well, good. I'm glad she said that, because
be a bad idea.
I am with a silver company now called Metal Stacks, and I'll look for the link because they actually are. Oh, not Metals Stacks. It's Metal. I'll find the link, but it's actual at the dealer prices, the wholesale prices, whereas 7K Metals stopped doing that. They stopped doing those dealer prices. They stopped doing the wholesale prices, and now they just sell collectibles. So I did start with a new company that does that. So I will drop a link just so people might be interested in getting silver at $18 an ounce. Yep.
Well, that makes sense because there's a higher premium on collectibles, so I'm sure the profit margin's a little bit higher. So there's probably as the metal stack's probably a little more practical, perhaps. Like you can get fractional stuff that's not collectible. Is that kind of my understanding?
No, yeah, that right. With this new metal stacks, what I'm doing, yes, with the
bullion and such.
With 7K Metals, they really don't have hardly any bullion. They have junk silver, which is definitely
that's good.
Yeah, so you can get junk silver, and then you can get regular silver eagles and some rounds, whereas you can't even get those anymore over at a 7K Metals. So I'm not putting 7K Metals down. If you're into collectibles, then that's great. You can do your collectibles there. But I'm not into collectibles. I don't want any more collectibles. I want gold and silver. So that's why I started this new one. But I got to figure out how to share my my link, and then I will.
Well, she even says it here that she's doing it for an expressed reason of getting the state animal coins, which I didn't even know about. So I guess West Virginia would be a black bear. That would look interesting. So we'll be on chapter 72 of the Psalms. So I would like to read the Psalms, but we'll just be sharing the Torah portions. But we haven't read any Psalms for a while, so I really like to read them. And the reason we read the Psalms, it's not really in a sequential order or any kind of order. Every Psalm is like a snapshot of moments of when God has intervened with his people and saved them or done miracles, or they're just praising God. And of course these are written by David, so a lot of times it'll start with David composed this psalm for Solomon, praying that he be granted the wisdom to provide justice for the poor. So that forms the kind of the tempo for the psalm. And most of them do begin that way. And it'll even sometimes indicate an instrument. So sometimes we pause and reference that a little bit too. So it kind of helps bring things to life a little more. So would you like to begin, or shall I read? I've been talking a lot.
Let me see.
Didn't want to booger the
I'll,
stream.
I'll start with chapter 72, verses 1 through 20, correct?
Yeah, it's just 20 verses.
All right, chapter.
Can you see it clearly?
I sure can. Chapter 72. David composed this psalm for Solomon, praying that he be granted the wisdom to provide justice for the poor. Verse 1. For Solomon, O God, impart your justice to the king and your righteousness to the son of the king. May he judge your people with righteousness, your poor with justice. May the mountains bear peace to the nations. Sorry, I was just making sure everybody could hear me. And they can. May the mountains bear peace to the nation.
Oh, sorry. I hold on. I hit the mute, and it. There we go. Okay, I'm glad it didn't axe everything. I went to unmute myself and hit Control N, and it started a new page. I'm really sorry about that. Please.
That's
continue.
okay. We're on verse 3. May the mountains bear peace to the nation, also the hills, in reward for their righteousness. May he judge the nations poor, save the children of the destitute, and crush the oppressor, so that they will fear you as long as the sun shines and the moon endures generation after generation. May his words descend like rain upon cut grass, like raindrops that water the earth. In his days may the righteous flourish, with much peace until the moon is no more. And may he rule from sea to sea, and from river until the ends of the earth. May nobles kneel before him, and may his enemies lick the dust. The kings of Tarshish and the islands will return tribute. The kings of Sheba and Seba will offer gifts. All kings will bow to him. All nations will serve him, for he rescues the needy one who cries out, the poor one who has no one to help him. He pities the impoverished and needy and saves the souls of the destitute. He redeems their soul from deception and violence, and their blood is precious in his eyes. He revives the poor and gives him of the gold of Sheba, and so the poor pray for him always and bless him all day. May there be abundant grain in the land upon the mountain tops. May its fruit rustle like the cedars of Lebanon, and may people blossom from the city like the grass of the earth. May his name endure forever. May his name be magnified as long as the sun shines. And all nations will bless themselves by him. They will praise him. Blessed is the Lord God, the God of Israel, who alone performs wonders. Blessed is his glorious name forever, and may the whole earth be filled with his glory. Amen and amen. The prayers of David, son of Jesse, are concluded.
Wow, that's really powerful. Particularly if you look into Isaiah 11, it discusses Isaiah 11:1. It'll discuss how the son of David, or excuse me, the son of root of Jesse, or something to that effect. I'm sorry, I don't want to butcher it. And then again in Revelation 22:16, it mentions being the root of David. But that's why, again, I like the Psalms, because these little clues like that crop up a lot. Oh, okay, there's a footnote here. David composed this psalm at the end of his lifetime. So that was for the one above. Now for chapter 73. This psalm addresses the question of why the righteous suffer while the wicked prosper, and prays for an end to our long exile. Read, and you will find repose in your soul. Verse 1, a psalm by Asaph. Truly God is good to Israel, to the pure of heart. But as for me, my feet nearly strayed. In an instant my steps would have been swept aside. For I envied the revelers when I saw the tranquility of the wicked. For there are no bonds to their death, and their health is sound. They have no part in the toil of men, nor are they afflicted like other mortals. Therefore they wear pride as a necklace. Their bodies are enwrapped in violence. Their eyes bulge from fat. They surpassed the fantasies of their heart. They consume others and talk wickedly of oppression from on high. Do they speak? They set their mouths against heaven. while their tongues walk upon the earth. Therefore his people return here and suck full cup of bitter waters. And they say, how can it be that God knows? Is there knowledge in the Most High? Behold, these are the wicked, and they are ever tranquil. They have gained much wealth. Surely in vain I have purified my heart and washed my hands in cleanliness. For I was afflicted all day, and my rebuke came each morning. Were I to say, I shall tell it like it is. Behold, I will turn the generation of your children to rebels. That kind of sounds like what we're going through right now, huh? Verse 16, and when I pondered to understand this, it was unjust in my eyes until I came to the sanctuaries of God and perceived their end. Only on slippery places do you set them. You cast them into darkness. How they became desolate in an instant. They came to an end. They were consumed by terrors, like a dream upon awakening. O my Lord, disgrace their image in the city. When my heart was in the ferment, and my mind was sharpened, I was a boor. That's an interesting word here. B-O-O-R. I was a boor and did not understand. Like an animal, I was with you, yet I was always with you. You held my right hand. Guide me with your counsel, and afterward receive me with honor. Whom do I have in heaven besides you? And when I am with you, I desire nothing on earth. My flesh and my heart yearn. God is my rock. God is the rock, rather, of my heart and my portion forever. For behold, all those who are far from you perish. You cut down all who stray from you. But as for me, the nearness of God is my good. I have put my trust in my Lord God, that I may recount all your works. It's cool, dude. God bless the children. So
Everybody else can't hear them, just you.
Okay. Yeah, it does kind of break my concentration sometimes when I hear things, but I try to power through it. I always forget that the other people can't hear. So I really like this. This is an interesting set of verses here. Again, this is David writing these, so we kind of get a glimpse into his relationship with the Spirit, and how real it was for him. You know, remember that each night when he would be in his bedroom, the Spirit would come into his room and strum the strings on his harp, you know, and so he would sit and compose these as the Spirit was, you know, sitting with him. So these were basically entertaining the Spirit. You know, it says he played a note that pleased the Lord, you know. So when I'm reading these, I like to try and reflect on, you know, that kind of scene where, just like when he was a shepherd, he was sitting out under the night sky, the Spirit sits with him at night. And so he's a bit of a watchman and a poet, really. Okay, so the footnote here is their death is not protected by illness, and the way of the wicked, Rashi, is misery, they say. So the premise here is he's looking at these folks and saying, well, how is evil prospering? So that'd be like the wheat looking to the tare and saying, well, the tare seems to be doing quite fine. Why is it that it's, you know, doing so well? Well, even weeds thrive, really, you know, when they're getting everything they need. And that's the whole point, is that weeds a lot of times can choke out the resources for other beneficial plants. And so some of the parables that regard seeds falling on stone or good soil, etc., that could kind of apply here too, where the environment may not be conducive for Christians, but it might be okay for, you know, these people. So this guy's perspective is kind of looking at that. And so they were at war a lot with these cultures, and so as they were attacking them and stuff, they were probably wondering these same questions, right? But he's ending here by saying that he's relying on God, and that those who stray from them are, they perish. So this is the unfruitful branch is hewn and cast into the fire. So even though it may look like they're thriving, some spirits do have dominion over wealth and such. They, after all, are over principalities. So that could include mineral wealth, resources, what have you. But anyhow, let's continue. Do you want to read chapter 74?
Yes.
That might be, there's one more after that.
Okay, chapter 74. The psalmist mourns and weeps over all the synagogues and study halls that have been burned. The Philistines destroyed the tabernacle of Shiloh. Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the first temple. We have been in exile for so long without seeing any signs of redemption. When will the redemption come? Read and you will find lamentation and consolation. Verse 1. A Maskil by Asaph. Why, O God, have you abandoned us forever? Does your wrath fume against the sheep of your pasture? Remember your congregation which you acquired long ago, the tribe of your inheritance, whom you redeemed and brought to Mount Zion, where you rested your presence. Lift your steps to inflict eternal ruin because of all evil done by the enemy in the sanctuary. Your foes roared in the midst of your meeting place. They considered their omens to be genuine signs. The axes in the thicket of trees were reckoned as bringing an offering to the above. And now all her ornaments together are smashed by hammer and hatchet. They set your sanctuary on fire. They desecrated the abode of your name to the ground. Their rulers thought together in their hearts. They burned all the meeting places of God in the land. We have not seen our signs. There is no longer a prophet, and there is none among us who knows how long. How long, O God, will the adversary disgrace? Will the enemy blaspheme your name forever? Why do you withdraw your hand, even your right hand? Cast it out from within your bosom. For God is my king from long ago, working salvations in the midst of the earth. In your might you divided the sea, you shattered the heads of the sea monsters on the waters, you crushed the heads of the Leviathan, leaving him as food for the nation, wandering in the wilderness. You split the rock, bringing forth fountain and brook. You dried up mighty streams. Yours is the day, the night is also yours. You established the moon and the sun. You set all the boundaries of the earth. Summer and winter you created them. Remember this, how the enemy reviled the Lord, and the vile nation blasphemed your name. Do not give the soul of your turtle dove to the wild beast. Do not forget the life of your poor forever. Look to the covenant, for the dark places of the earth are filled with dens of violence. Do not turn back the oppressed in disgrace. Then the poor and needy will praise your name. Arise, O God, champion your cause. Remember your insults from the perverse all day long. Forget not the voice of your adversaries. The tumult of your opponents ascends always.
That was another good one. All of them are good, really. Yeah, so this is when, the same instance here, those same people, in a sense, are who eventually come and destroy the temple, right? So once the disobedience had gotten to a certain point, a tyrant is allowed to rise up and conquer, which is about, that's kind of where we're at now. So we're going to see that happen again. So these types of passages really help to kind of color that a little bit for us. Oh, there's another footnote. A psalm intended to enlighten and impart knowledge, chopping wood for the construction of the temple, Pharaoh and his chieftains. This footnote here is interesting because we are in the time of Tu B'Av. It just passed, I think. And so that is the time when the hatchet is broken. So the labor would be over, all the wood had been cut, and then they would break the hatchet. So the labor is over. We just had Labor Day, for instance. So we can even see today that there's still vestiges of this kind of, the ceasing of labor. This is when people, pious or Orthodox folks, will start to take vacation because, the labor's over right now. You're supposed to get prepared to go to the temple, because again, there's 3 days, well, 3 times of year that you're required to go if you were a male. And that was unleavened bread in the spring, Pentecost midway through spring and fall, and then Yom Kippur in the fall. So we're coming up on the day of judgment. And so, you had to travel a long ways in that time. And so your labor had to end. Now, another thing to add here is that after the breaking of the axe, the singles of the community would then go to the vineyard and they would find somebody to wed. And so, as we move into fall, you can remind yourself that this tradition of falling in love is going out and finding somebody this time of year to wed. And then, so with that backdrop, we can look at the Galilean wedding and through that context maybe gain some insight on some of these prophecies, as to when the bridegroom and the father show up for the bride. Well, this is actually a good time for that, because the labor will have been completed for the year, and this is a very traditional time for weddings. So pretty much any time between now and Judgment Day would be a good day. Of course, Judgment Day is very holy and there's no work, so you're not going to see people getting married on that day. Of course, it's also a solemn day of fasting, etc. But anyway, that's something to keep in mind. Oh, it looks like there's a couple more. How many more are there? Okay. Well, let's just read. How much time do we have? I haven't been keeping track of it. 6:35.
Oh, we have an hour and 25 minutes.
Okay, well, maybe we can read 2 more of these then. So, okay, 75 is pretty short. How great is Israel during their holidays? They do not engage in frivolity, I guess the act of being frivolous, but rather in song and praise, and the study of the holy holidays' laws, rather. Also, let me adjust my screen. Sometimes it gets hard for me to read. I mess up. Okay. Also, when they proclaim at the giving of the Torah, we will do and we will hear, they allowed the world to remain in existence. The psalm also admonishes those who indulge in worldly pleasures and attribute their prosperity to their own efforts. So again, this is a chastisement to those on the left-hand path. So again, going back up to, I think it was 73 or 74, or 73 rather, where it's talking about, those folks, why are they prospering and stuff? Well, they're doing it with their own efforts, and they seem to be succeeding. What's going on here? Because to a pious person that's suffering, that may not make a lot of sense, right? Well, let's continue here. So, for the conductor, a plea not to be destroyed, a psalm by Asaph. So, let me put one reference here. Ezekiel 9:4 comes to mind here, because in this case, the 7 angels manifest at the altar to judge the city, and then the one with the inkhorn goes through the city and marks the faithful on the forehead with an X, those who sigh and cry because of the abominations done. And so I would imagine this is the same attitude there. Verse 2, we give thanks to you, O God. And notice here that you is capitalized every time because it's referring to God, whereas earth is not capitalized. That's one thing I've noticed that I wanted to point out. He's showing respect here. We give thanks to you, O God. We give thanks, and your name, Hashem, was near when they told of your wonders. When I chose the appointed time, I will judge with fairness. When the earth and all of its inhabitants were melting. Is that what that says? Melting? It reminds me of that song. I'll stop the world and melt for you. When the earth and all of its inhabitants were melting, I established its pillars forever. I said to the perverse, do not pervert Israel, and to the wicked, do not raise your pride. Pride is what buds and causes the judgment. So we do see pride budding right now. In fact, we even see pride parades. Now, I'm not saying that, it's necessarily directly connected to that, but that's the point, is that pride buds, and it's in all ways, not just one particular way. Do not raise your pride heavenward, nor speak with an arrogant neck. So the arrogant neck would refer to the tares in the wheat, where the crown of a wheat bows its head, the fruit bows its crown, whereas the tare stands erect and straight, right, because of the pride. So that's why it's associated with this arrogant straight neck here. Verse 7, for not from the east or the west, nor from the desert does greatness come. For God is judge, he humbles one and elevates the other. For there is a cup of punishment in the hand of the Lord, with strong wine of full mixture. He pours from this, and all the wicked of the earth will drink, draining even its dregs. I think there's in Isaiah, or there's a verse about taking the cup away and the dregs. In other words, sparing one from judgment, that comes to mind. And also the parable about the wedding and the good wine, that seems to be the best, because it's not mixed and watered down. It's full mixture, meaning undiluted wine, the good stuff, rather. Spirit that has not been diluted. And so we can refer again to the passage in Joel, and also Acts 2:16 through 17, for kind of a reference to like the pouring out of the Spirit in full mixture. And it says the wicked of the earth will drink from it, even including the dregs. So if you've ever had wine and had a headache the next day, well, that's due to the dregs, essentially. The sulfites, again, sulfur is associated with judgment from heaven. So you can kind of imagine, like, it's somewhat likening this to the bad side effects, not the good ones. But as for me, I will tell of it forever. I will sing to the God of Jacob. And remember, Jacob refers to heel catcher. Verse 11, I will cut off all glory of the wicked, but the glory of the righteous will be raised up. So this simple verse here is kind of referring to what we think of as the rapture, the gathering of the wheat or the elect, and the burning of the tares or the unfruitful branches. It's all kind of summed up right here in this one last verse. And then I guess if you want to read this one, their footnote here is our ancestors, although I'm not sure where. Okay. It was in verse 2 here. It was referring to ancestors up here. Would you like to read 76, and then we'll continue on, because there's actually several more Psalms. I love them, but at the same time, I want to make sure we don't run over 2 hours.
Yep, I'll read 76. Chapter 76, the psalm contains the prophecy of when the vast army of Sennacherib was seized with a deep slumber that rendered the hands of the soldiers powerless to raise their weapons. Thus did they all fall in battle. Verse 1. For the conductor with instrumental music, a psalm by Asaph, a song. God is known in Judah. His name is great in Israel. His tabernacle was in Shilem, and his dwelling place in Zion. There he broke the flying arrows of the bow, the shield, the sword and battle forever. Or the bow, the shield, the sword and battle forever. You are illumination mightier than the mountains of prey. The stout-hearted were without sense. They slept their sleep, and all the warriors were unable to find their strength. At your rebuke, O God of Jacob, chariot and horse were stunned. You, awesome are you. Who can stand before you once you are enraged? From heaven you let the verdict be heard. The earth feared and was still. When God rose to pass judgment, to save all the humble of the earth forever, the anger of man will cause us to thank you. You will restrain the residue of wrath. Make vows to the Lord your God and fulfill them. All who surround him will bring tribute to the awesome one. He cuts down the spirit of nobles. He is awesome to the kings of earth. And real quick, I did share the precious metals link, Marie, in the chat.
Oh yeah, she was asking something about signing up. My account's not active, so if you sign up under me, that would kind of be a wasted benefit. So if you know anybody else that's a subscriber, you may want to share that benefit with them. I was a bad subscriber. I was not active whatsoever. Thank you very much. That was a very good psalm. And so again, the footnotes here is that Shalom would be Jerusalem, which means peace. So the city of peace. I can't get it to, there we go. And then the number 2, that one showed up here at the anger of man will cause us to thank you. You will restrain the residue of wrath. So he's talking about those the wicked that are angry with Israel. So basically every nation around them, they were warring with them. So that's, again, the context here. And that's why this city here is named Peace. So you got peace in the center of all this chaos. So when we say that, Jerusalem's like the apple of God's eye, it really is. It's like it's like the eye of a storm, all around it's chaos, but in the center is this peace. However, we see that this peace is removed when we read about Sennacherib and Nebuchadnezzar both, with their armies coming in and destroying it. So at times it's like the eye is poked or destroyed whenever they fall into disobedience. They're not under the protection of the Lord. Well, we can move on. And again, if you're just joining us, we're reading some of the Psalms associated with today. And so there's the link. And part of our routine when we do this type of show is to share the view of the night sky, which is particularly auspicious this evening. All the planets are visible except for Mercury. I heard a French person say this the other day. It was Mercury. And I really enjoyed it, so I may adopt that pronunciation. I do like my voices after all. So anyway, you can go through here. This is a very handy site. You can see the rise times, etc. So if you have a telescope or a pair of binoculars, sometimes you can catch some of these, and then it'll give you the viewing conditions, like for instance here with binoculars. So don't think that you gotta have a full-blown telescope and all that to enjoy this kind of a hobby. And so again, this is the view over Jerusalem, which is here. And so this is what they could expect to see. Now, of course, it also shows the night sky back here. And we have a harvest moon tonight. So if you notice the moon's really, really bright, know that that is significant of the harvest moon in September. So again, this is the time when labor is ending. The harvest is finishing. I heard somebody comment today at the training earlier when I was there. They were harvesting sugarcane today. So, pay attention to the crops and what's being harvested, because sometimes we catch clues to these types of things in the scripture. Because really the calendar is set by these things. The first fruits harvest is determined by barley in the spring. And so pretty much everything from that point on, we see the first light of our moon after the spring equinox, blow the horn, the shofar. That begins Nisanu. Well, Nisanu means first fruits. And of course, we find our first fruits feast day in the spring. So anyway, and then of course it goes on and on with wheat. And then around this time and a little bit later, I think they do grapes. So, when we read in Revelation and it's talking about the angels thrusting their scythes into the ground and reaping the earth and reaping the grapes and the grapes of wrath and all these sorts of things, and this imagery, we can kind of place that in a certain season, a certain time. So just like this is the time of weddings traditionally, we could also look at the harvesting of grapes and kind of glean a little bit of an understanding and maybe recognize what time of a year that is. Because sure, date setting isn't something we're supposed to do, but we read in Thessalonians that we're not in darkness, so we're to know like the season, because we're watchmen. So it may not be such a mystery as to what time of year we expect to see these things. It's just simply a matter of which year it is, I think, in some regard, because this does precede winter. And so, I think that's another clue there, because we read about the rapture taking place. Christ refers to it in this term. He says, pray that your departure not be in the winter or on the Sabbath day. Well, today is a Sabbath day, for instance. So pray that it not be on a day of rest, like a Saturday or a feast day, or in the winter. So, those are some things to consider. The only other special type of day in the winter would be, I can't remember what it's called right now, Hanukkah. And that's where the temple was rededicated. However, we'll find that we have another tabernacles focused holiday in this month, or season, I should say. And that's Sukkot. And that's the other reference to the tabernacle. So the first time it was built and the second time it was built. Okay, excuse me. I was getting a little bit ahead of myself. So anyway, I'll transition here to what I was going to talk about the queen. And so this is happening around this time of year. So that could add some significance to it. But I wanted to talk a little bit about this because, we had been hearing rumors about her passing for a while, and even hearing folks on newscasts kind of like making hiccups and saying that she had passed away or whatever. So it's kind of strange to consider that this might have happened a while back and that they're just now telling us. But then again, she did show up recently at the Jubilee. So I did want to focus on this just a little bit because, with the Jubilee just having happened, we know that Jubilee has a biblical reference as well. And that's a measure of time in terms of like years. And of course, we're in the fig tree generation right now at the year, let me see, in May 2018 would have made 70 years. So I think that puts us in about the 74th year of the fig tree generation. So we're told that we're going to see a lot of these prophecies be fulfilled before that generation is over. And so, things like this with the passing of the queen, these are kind of like milestones of that era. She kind of got to see all of that. I mean, she was alive before Israel was recreated, and, passes away just as the fig tree generation is kind of coming to fruition. But just as we were reading in the Psalms, I remember it's the pride that begins to sprout, and that's cut off. You ever heard the term nipping it in the bud? And so, we're seeing pride rise up right now and begin to bloom, but we're told that it will not bear fruit. So, if you pinch a bud or a blossom before it actually gets fertilized, then it will not bear fruit. And so we're being given the promise and reminder in some of these Psalms, for instance, that, that's not going to be, they might look like they're prospering, but it will come at a price, because when judgment comes upon them and suddenly, like a snare, of course, they'll be destroyed. So within that context of that, I kind of see these people sometimes as like chess pieces that get moved around on the board. And so that's kind of why I wanted to name the segment this evening. What was it? Queen B4, and then check the harvest moon. So, it's almost like a play on words to suggest that, she was harvested almost, because if it were a natural thing, then maybe it would have been a while back. But it's like, I think that the impact wasn't the same, like they wanted to wait or something. So that's just some speculation on my part. But one more thing I wanted to add in terms of the season and time of year that we're in, and Jubilee kind of aspects, are that we're in a time of a Shemitah as well, when debt is being forgiven. And so you might have heard in the news that they're starting to talk about forgiving student loan debt, which I just got mine paid off this year. So how do you think that feels?
And mine somehow disappeared. We don't know why, and I'm not going to ask any questions.
That's kind of strange. Did you get a letter?
No letter. It just doesn't show up on my credit report. And I even went into the bank and talked to the loan officer, whatever they call her, and she also couldn't understand why it wasn't showing up. She said, well, if you want to find out why, you can call them. I said, I don't think I want to call them. So it's just like kind of written off or something. It's very strange.
I see somebody here in the chat's got amaranth. I've heard that that's a really good superfood type plant that's really easy to grow. And I think it's easy to store too. I could be mistaken about some of those claims, but yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about this crop. And yeah, some people think that maybe she's been dead since 2017. Well, I mean, you look at the president, and it looks like it's not even really him. So who knows? For all we know, it could be one of those body doubles. It's kind of creepy too when you consider that, Hollywood is kind of behind that mask thing too, where they can create these lifelike visages of people and put them on. It's very unsettling. Faith versus fear. I was in a Telegram chat earlier that had that very phrase in it. It was like in the Illuminati or something chat. And I felt that was a very powerful thing to say, because it's perfect. Love casts out fear, and as we come to know God, we no longer fear, because when we become familiar with the scriptures, we learn that a lot of this stuff has to play out. Like Christ said, there'll be wars and rumors of war and famine and pestilence and all these sorts of things. And he's like, this stuff has to happen, but we're given that promise of salvation under the blood of the Lamb. And so, imagine, there's been a time in your life when you've probably watched a movie and you've been on the edge of your seat and maybe biting your nails or something like that. We really get absorbed into it at times. And so that's kind of what we're going through right now, So when we feel that anxiety, it's like watching a high intensity movie for the first time and you don't know what's going to happen next, but imagine a movie that you've probably watched 50 times or, even several times, and you're not going to get the same kind of response out of it because you know what's going to happen next. And so when we become familiar with the scriptures, for instance, we're not shocked, we already know what's going to happen. And so God's people, they already know the plot. They've read the scripture. And so as we gain familiarity with the text and the stories that we're given, we start to understand that we don't need to be fearful because we have faith in the scriptures. Just like when the one Psalm, was the man was praying to be saved from destruction. So just like those in the Purim story, who thought they were going to be destroyed. The Hebrews being led out of Egypt thought they were going to be destroyed. And see, a lot of those folks didn't have the scriptures that we have. They were going purely on faith and oral tradition. We at least had the benefit of having a lot of these stories written down. So please remember that. So if you start to feel anxiety or something like that, go to the Psalms, read the Psalms, because so many of the wonders are accounted there. And also the book of Esther talks about the Purim story. The book of Maccabees talks about the oppression under Antiochus Epiphanes. So a lot of these tyrant type characters that have rose up in the past, just like the one we're going to see rise up in our time, it's happened before. This is just the great tribulation, but there has been many tribulations before. The great is the Omega also, by the way. We've shared in the past the Omega strain of Pokemon, if you catch my drift, is due to come out in 2023. So, somebody was mentioning 2007 here. So 2023 is about seven years after that. So, we kind of see a lot of these strange parallels with Revelation 12 crop up, which, by the way, we'll talk about that in brief here real quick regarding the red dragon. So in Revelation 12:1, we read about the woman with the child clothed in the sun with the moon at her feet, travailing in birth. And so that was fulfilled on 9/23/2017. So maybe we can drop a reference. And so Revelation 12:1 through 7. And if you look that up, you'll see the context of the dragon waiting to devour the child. So I wanted to bring this up because this is the flag for Wales. Well, this week, Prince of Wales comes into focus with William. Okay. In fact, that's let me see Catherine. Yeah, here it is. Okay. So I forgot to share the link. All right. So here's Catherine of Wales, Catherine of the Red Dragon, and William of the Red Dragon. And then the more specific title here. So remember, in Ephesians 6, it talks about how we're up against principalities, powers, wickedness in high places, etc., etc. Well, much of Europe is actually governed by kings and royalty. So I think a verse like that can really help to kind of explain some of the things we see happening here. So when the king or the queen passes, what kind of authority gap was created? What is the power vacuum that's being filled now? Is there something spiritual going on there? So those are some things to consider. And if a nation was Christian, why would they ever put a red dragon on their flag, right? So again, some things to consider. It's kind of like when I went to watch one of my, not my children, but clients' football games, and their mascot was the Red Devil. And I thought to myself, why would a school choose a Red Devil? And it's apparently a very popular mascot. But just like mascots for sports teams and schools, we have flags that are kind of the same thing. So, you kind of look at this as the mascot for Wales. And a lot of times we see animals used to represent countries. For instance, the United States is a lot of times associated with an eagle, Russia, a bear. Now, England as a whole, a lot of times is a lion. And some bloodlines are associated also with the unicorn. So whenever you see these animals, try to think in terms of bloodlines and principalities and their influence. And that'll help to explain, maybe some behind the scenes things that are going on. And chimeras, for that matter, would be kingdoms mixing or authorities mixing, which if you consider the aspects of angels and what their talents and abilities are, that can also, a chimera could have abilities that, like a pure cherubim might have certain amount of abilities. Seraphim might have a certain amount of abilities, but a cherubim mixed with a seraphim would have different abilities or a mixture of the two. You see what I mean? So, and these were the things that they were doing pre-flood that caused judgment and everything to be wiped out. So I digress. I'm out of practice, so forgive me for chasing rabbits. But anyway, the reason the Archbishop of Canterbury is up here is because this is the guy that's supposed to be crowning the king, Charles. Let me share the link here. So if I have to mute myself, it's because somebody is talking to me. Okay, so the Archbishop of Canterbury, and then there's a link here on Canterbury Tales, which might give us some insight. And let me share the Charles link real quick. Okay. Okie dokie. All right. Do you want to read some of this?
Sure. I will read the first 2 paragraphs, maybe, or just the first paragraph. What do you think?
Well, yeah, we can just do this chunk. That's fine. Just wanted to kind of add some context to things.
All right. Archbishop of Canterbury. I don't know if they pronounce it primate.
That's correct. Indeed.
All right. Primate of all England redirects here. For the primate of England, you can see the Archbishop of York. The Archbishop of Canterbury is the senior bishop and a principal leader of the Church of England, the ceremonial head of the worldwide Anglican Communion, and the diocesan bishop of the Diocese of Canterbury. The current archbishops in Justin Welby, who is Justin Welby, who was enthroned at Canterbury Cathedral on 21st March 2013. Welby is 105th in a line which goes back more than 1,400 years to Augustine of Canterbury, the apostle to the English sent from Rome in the year 597. Welby succeeded Rowan Williams. From the time of Augustine until the 16th century, the archbishops of Canterbury were in full communion with the See of Rome and usually received a pallium from the Pope. During the English Reformation, the Church of England broke away from the authority of the Pope. Thomas Cranmer became the first holder of the office following the English Reformation in 1533, while Reginald Pole was the last Roman Catholic in the position, serving from 1556 to 1558 during the Counter-Reformation. In the Middle Ages, there was a considerable variation in the methods of nomination of the Archbishop of Canterbury and other bishops. At various times, the choice was made by the monks of the cathedral priory before the dissolution of the monasteries under Henry VIII, the Pope, or the King of England. Since the Reformation, the Church of England has been more explicitly a state church, and the choice is legally that of the Crown. Today it is made by the reigning monarch on the advice of the Prime Minister, who in turn receives a short list of 2 names from an ad hoc committee called the Crown Nominations Commission.
I'm really sorry. There's people here that are just talking away.
Well, all very interesting in the meantime.
Maybe we could read a little bit of this, if you don't mind.
I sure can. The Canterbury Tales. The Canterbury Tales is a collection of 24 stories that runs to over 17,000 lines, written in Middle English by Geoffrey Chaucer. Hey, we have a Geoffrey spelled that way in the chat. Between 1387 and 1400. It is widely regarded as Chaucer's magnum opus. The tales, mostly written in verse, although some are in prose, are presented as part of a storytelling contest by a group of pilgrims as they traveled together from London to Canterbury to visit the shrine of St. Thomas Becket at Canterbury Cathedral. The prize for this contest is a free meal at the Tabard Inn at Southwark on their return. It has been suggested that the greatest contribution to the Canterbury Tales to English literature was the popularization of the English vernacular in mainstream literature, as opposed to French, Italian, or Latin. English had, however, been used as a literary language centuries before Chaucer's time, and several of Chaucer's contemporaries, John Gower, William Langland, the Pearl Poet, and Julian of Norwich, also wrote major literary works in English. It is unclear to what extent Chaucer was seminal in this evolution of literary preference. The Canterbury Tales is generally thought to have been incomplete at the end of Chaucer's life. In the general prologue, some 30 pilgrims are introduced. According to the prologue, Chaucer's intentions was to write 4 stories from the perspective of each pilgrim, 2 each on the way to and from their ultimate destination, St. Thomas Becket's shrine, making for a total of about 120 stories. Although perhaps incomplete, the Canterbury Tales is revered as one of the most important works in English literature.
Quite an interesting read. Thank you so much. So yeah, this dates back quite a ways. 1387, 1400. Whew. Man, that's old. So there's another link here I just dropped in the chat, and I didn't have this one pre-prepared. Or wait, maybe I did. Is that it right there? No. Okay. So this relevant to Charles. So Charles, winged and saving the world. Oh, hold on here. Okay.
Hey, John.
Hold on a second.
So, as you guys know from the past, our good friend here, Mr. NPC, his brother is visiting. So, but he is not pounding on the door. He's just there visiting. And it is his birthday. So, we may have to cut it early. Depends on what's going on. Oh, are you back? All right. I was just explaining that is your brother's birthday, so we may have to cut it short depending on what's going on over there.
Okay, sorry about that. I was reading here. So this statue here, the head bore a passing resemblance to the Prince of Wales, since Mercutio Bentes, the sculptor, was basing it on images from the internet. But then there were the wings. They sprouted from the bronze figurine, making it look like a Gothic Batman and almost completely encapsulating the statuette. This represents Prince Charles saving the world, said Jose Sequeira Campos, the governor of the Amazonian state of Anyway, he looked thrilled. Charles, next to him, looked a little bemused. Mr. Sequeira Campos then asked royal permission to build a life-size version of the Winged Prince and install it in the Palmas, the state capital, in a square to be named after his illustrious guest. I am very touched, smiled the prince, who was wearing a safari shirt and Indian bead necklaces, as he looked around for help from his advisors, and amazed. The prince's head of protocol gracefully accepted the statuette and then, holding it like a plate of strange local soup, walked across the wooden passageway to the royal speedboat. This is quite a compelling article. Palmas is probably looking for some street names, probably 14 years ago. This is bizarre. This is like written like a book. Anyway, I just wanted to share this. So we'll find this statue in Palmas. I hadn't previewed the article, pardon me. I just wanted to share that he was being portrayed this way as the savior of the world. And I could be mistaken, but was this the guy that also said that if he were to ever die, he would hope that he was reincarnated as a virus to solve the overpopulation problem? Is that this guy, or was it?
No idea on that.
Well, if you could find that real quick, I'd appreciate it. It's either Philip or Charles. So
they said they would come back as a virus.
Yeah, that they wanted to be reincarnated. Okay, his father said that, so it must have been Philip. So, and Philip's gone, of course. So, it's like he comes back as a virus for Charles to be the savior of the world, like kind of weird thing, huh? So, if you think about that, that's kind of bizarre. Anyway, I just wanted to share that article real quick because I forgot to bring it up earlier. So we talked a little bit about the Archbishop of Canterbury, and this is the guy that'll be crowning Charles. We talked a little bit about the Canterbury Tales. We haven't really talked much about Charles III yet. So they already updated his wiki too, just like William. So this guy here is...
That was fast.
He's a Scorpio. I didn't notice what William and Catherine were. Okay, so King of the United Kingdom and 14 other Commonwealth realms. He ascended to the throne September 8th, 2022, upon the death of his mother, Elizabeth II, as Duke of Cornwall and Duke of Rothesay from 1952 to his ascension. He was the oldest and the longest-serving heir apparent in British history, and the longest-serving Prince of Wales, having held the title from the 26th of July 1958 until his ascension. So bear that in mind, that should he ever pass away, that means that William and Catherine would stand to become king and queen. So of course these folks seem to be figureheads, as people may say, but I think it's something we should still pay attention to, because after all, they still rule over more than just the United Kingdom, while the United Kingdom is named that for a reason. More than just England, rather. So, I mean, that's quite a few nations to be ruling over. Charles was born in Buckingham Palace, the first child of his mother and Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. He is the first grandchild of King George VI and his consort, Queen Elizabeth. He was educated at Chame and Gordonstown schools, both of which his father attended as a child. He later spent a year at the Timbertop campus of Geelong Grammar School in Victoria, Australia, after earning a Bachelor's of Arts degree from the University of Cambridge. Charles served in the Royal Air Force and Royal Navy from 1971 to 1976. In 1981, he married Lady Diana Spencer, with whom he had two sons, Prince William and Prince Harry. In 1996, the couple divorced after they had engaged in well-publicized extramarital affairs. Diana died as a result of the car crash in Paris. The following year, in 2005, Charles married his longtime partner, Camilla Parker Bowles. So yes, remember Princess Diana, back in the 90s, the controversy surrounding her death, etc. So this guy here is the eldest of her children, Harry being the second oldest rather, or second of them. All right, as Prince of Wales, this will be important because this is going to be the duties associated with William here. As Prince of Wales, Charles undertook official duties on behalf of Elizabeth II. He founded the youth charity, the Prince's Trust, in 1976, sponsors the Prince's Charities, and is a patron, president, or member of over 400 other charities and organizations. He has advocated for the conservation of historic buildings and the importance of architecture in society. A critic of modernist architecture, Charles worked on the creation of the Poundbury, an experimental new town based on his architectural tastes. He's also also the author or co-author of a number of books. An environmentalist, Charles supported organic farming and action to prevent climate change during the time as a manager at Duchy of Cornwall Estates, earning him awards and recognition from environmental groups. He is also a prominent critic of the adoption of genetically modified food. I must say I'm a little bit shocked. Organic farming, he's against genetically modified food. Charles' support for homeopathy and other alternative medicines has been the subject of criticism, following allegations concerning the offering of British citizenship to donors. The conduct of one of his charities, the Prince's Foundation, has attracted criticism. Currently, the charity is the subject of an ongoing metropolitan police investigation into the cash for honors allegations. I guess that means like buying medals to be decorated with. Is that kind of the accusation there? I'm sure the Queen did that all the time. You make a healthy contribution to the coffers, you get knighted. I mean, Isn't that how it goes? Anyway, I just wanted to read some of that stuff so that we had a little bit of context here. And you guys can do some independent reading on your own. And let's read over again. There's the red dragon. Okay, so let's read a little bit about the Prince of Wales. And no, I don't mean orcas. Prince of Wales, which, by the way, this is a topic that I think Gary Wayne would appreciate, because Wales is actually Welsh, which is Irish in terms of like the Tuatha De Danann, the fairies, all that stuff. That's what we're talking about here, And remember, when he was on way back when, we were talking about the Dragon Messiah. So as of right now, I know it may not seem like a great candidate because it may not fit what you think, but technically speaking, Charles would kind of possibly fit that bill right now, because it just occurred to me he even has 111 in his name, which is kind of like a vav 666. So again, not saying he is, but keep an eye on that red dragon. Anyway, I shall continue. So this is the Welsh pronunciation of the Prince of Wales, and it's a title historically used by the native independent Welsh princes, and since the 14th century by the heir apparent of the English and later British throne. So the line of kings comes from this Welsh line. So this is the dragon line, I think, that Gary was talking about. So whereas we think they're just figureheads, spiritually, there's a lot more going on, I think. Historically, the title was held by native Welsh princes before the 12th century. The term replaced the use of the word king. The first holder of the title Prince of Wales and also King of Wales was Gyfed ap Simon, or Gwynedd. This is really interesting too, because we've went over this in the past. The Wild Hunt, the leader of the Wild Hunt. Pardon my typing noises here. Wild Hunt is Gwyn ap Nud.
Is this where they hunt children?
Well, that's when they hunt everybody. King of the fairies. So like the time we're in now, Judgment Day vibes. Also, the winter time is associated with this. So basically from fall to winter, your wild hunt is kind of going on. And so that's when these other spirits are kind of given dominion to just run amok and do whatever they like. And if you don't have the seal or the blood of the lamb, you'd kind of be subject to some of these things perhaps. So that's one way to, hey, it's Loren. So that's one way to kind of look at it here, is that he's somewhat related to the wild hunt. So these folks could be in charge of the wild hunt that's going on right now. Just saying. So anyway, I digress. So again, we left off on this name here and how it was similar to Gwyn ap Nud. So please do a search on this. It's a really fun rabbit hole, and I promise you won't be disappointed. So this guy goes all the way back to 1137, although his son Owen Gwynedd, also King and Prince of Wales, is often cited as having established the title. Lilwyn the Great, that's a really cool name. Let's share that real quick. Lilwyn the Great is typically regarded as the strongest leader, holding power over the vast majority of Wales for 45 years. One of the last native princes of Wales and grandson of Lilwyn the Great was Lilwyn ap Gruffudd, Lilwyn the Last, who was killed at the Battle of Orwyn Bridge in 1282. Lilwyn's brother, Dafydd ap Gwynedd, was tortured, hanged, drawn, and quartered the following year, thus ending Welsh independence. Following these two deaths, Edward I of England invested his son, Prince Edward, born in Caermarthen Castle in 1284, as the first English Prince of Wales in 1301. The title was claimed by the Welsh heir Gwynedd Owen Glyndwr from 1400 until 1415, date of his assumed death, who led Welsh forces against the English. Since then, the title has only been held by the heir of the English and subsequently British monarch. The English, later British title is not inheritable, but not heritable, and is merged with the crown when its holder eventually accedes the throne. So it's not replaced, it's merged. So the dragon literally becomes king. That's exactly what they're saying right here. That's very interesting. Or reverts to the crown if its holder precedes the current monarch. Since 1301, the title Earl of Chester has been given in conjunction with that of Prince of Wales. Well, if you're going to do that, you got to at least drop it. Well, did you see what that heraldry looked like, folks? Look at that. That's a bunch of wheat bound up. So, again, the parable of the wheat and the tares.
I was going to say, or is it tares bound up? Does it bear fruit?
Well, it looks like we have fruit on the top of those. So, wheat would be gathered and bound up and harvested and then threshed. And so the temple was actually constructed upon the threshing floor of Ornan. So that's where they would have beat the wheat and then gotten the fruit off of it, right? The wheat kernels. And then what was left would be the chaff. And that's what would be burned up, or the wind would take it away, etc. But I just find it interesting that they got 3 bundles of wheat. Now, you could also refer to wheat or a single sheaf of wheat more appropriately, but you can refer to sheaves of wheat as shibboleth. So that's another thing to add. Here, let's just put that. That's a bundle of wheat, or fascia. Good job, S. Loren. Very correct. And you'll a lot of times see Virgo, the virgin, holding a sheaf of wheat or a fascia of wheat, a measure of wheat. So within the context of the black horse that holds the scales and shouts out a measure of barley for a penny and measure of wheat for 3 pennies or something like that. I can't remember which it is, but we can kind of think of it that way too, because of course Virgo is standing with the scales. So she's kind of setting the standard. Like when we look at a piece of silver, it says, what is it, an ounce troy silver 0.999, whatever. That's the standard, right? And so this sheaf of wheat is the standard by which we're weighed. Are we fruitful? This is the standard that she kind of looks at, right? And in that regard, when she's weighing the wheat. So I just find it really interesting that the Earl of Chester has that heraldry. So this is the harvest moon today, right? So how appropriate, right? So let's continue here. The Prince of Wales usually has other titles and honors. The eldest son of the monarch, typically this meaning being Duke of Cornwall, which, unlike being Prince of Wales, inherently includes lands and constitutional operational responsibilities. Well, we better share that one too. It's interesting how they hide a bunch of things under these different titles, these different hats. Okay, which, unlike Prince of Wales, inherently includes constitutional and operational responsibilities. Since the 14th century, the title has been a dynastic title, traditionally, but not necessarily, granted by the English or British monarch to the son or grandson who is their heir apparent to the throne. On September 8th, 2022, the title merged, again, we got another merger, with the crown when its previous and longest serving holder, Prince Charles, became the king upon death of his mother, Elizabeth II. Wow, this is updated fast. The following day, Charles III bestowed the title upon his son, Prince William, Duke of Cornwall and Cambridge. The investiture of Charles was largely welcomed in Wales, according to the article in the National Archives blog. There was some opposition at the time to the use of Prince of Wales title by the British heir apparent and protests. Following Charles's ascension to the throne in September 2022, a petition was launched calling for the abolition of the title, which by the 10th of September had received more than 10,000 signatures. So as of today, there are 10,000 signatures on a petition to stop this. Kind of interesting. My last name actually comes from this Wales area, I suspect. It's Irish, but you do find Dawn in the Welsh stuff, so I've often wondered if it comes from that, which means king, so it would kind of make sense, I guess. Anyway, let's read a little bit about Catherine. So this is the Prince of Wales title. So again, if you're just joining us, we were reading about that. Oh, yeah. Thanks for talking about that. I think I have I can't remember what I did with it. I had a picture that's saying what Yassin's in the chat here, talking about the Queen died at age 96 on 8/9/2022 at age 96. 66 month. 9 equals 6. 8th day is 8. Also for code for 33. Well, the meme I saw wasn't quite that. It was something a little bit different. I might have it here. Hold on. Give me just a moment. I didn't really have this pre-prepared. I don't remember what I did with it. I'm sorry. I can't find it. Okay. Well, let's read about Catherine real quick. And then we'll move ahead. If I find that meme, I'll share it. Oh, bless you, Aaron. I got so caught up in what I was doing, I forgot.
I was over here sneezing so that everybody else knows. But thank you for the blessing.
Okay, so Catherine, Princess of Wales. This is, in other words, she's known as Kate Middleton. She's a Capricorn here. Oh, and I didn't notice what William was. So June 21st. He's born on the summer solstice, actually. So that would make him June. So he's technically Cancer. Gemini, Cancer. Which is interesting because Cancer is also the sheepfold gate from the Hebrew perspective, which is where you'd bring the sheep. Remember when we done our Babe episode about the pig that was a sheepdog? Well, the pen they'd bring the sheep to, that is Cancer. So anyway, it's kind of interesting that he's born right there. Anyway, we're reading about Catherine, so let me close that tab and get this one up. Do you want to read a little bit about her since I read the other?
Yeah,
Let's just do this first section here. That's all we really need to do.
Sure. Okay. Catherine, Princess of Wales, Kate Middleton. Catherine, Princess of Wales, born Catherine Elizabeth Middleton, 9 January of 1982, is a member of the British royal family, married to William, Prince of Wales, heir apparent to the British throne, making Catherine an expected future queen consort. Born in Reading, I would assume it's pronounced, Middleton grew up in Bucklebury, Berkshire. She was educated at St. Andrew's School in Marlborough College before studying art history at the University of St. Andrews in Scotland, where she met William in 2001. She held jobs in retail and marketing and pursued charity work before their engagement was announced in November 2010. They married on 29 April 2011 at Westminster Abbey. Geez, they've been married 11 years already. Not that I care, just I remember that, so time is really getting faster. The couple's children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, are second, third, and fourth in line of succession to the British throne, respectively. Since her marriage, the princess has undertaken royal duties and engagements in support of Queen Elizabeth II. She holds patronage within over 20 charitable and military organizations, including Action for Children, Sports Aid, and the National Portrait Gallery. She undertakes projects through the Royal Foundation with her charity work focusing on issues. She works with a lot of children. That's just weird. Issues surrounding young children, addiction, and art. Probably gives her access to the blood of them children. To encourage people to open up about their mental health issues, the Duchess envisioned the Mental Health Awareness Campaign Heads Together, launched with the Duke and Prince Harry in April 2016. The media have called Catherine's impact on British and American fashion the Kate Middleton effect. In 2011, 12, and 13, Time magazine selected her as one of the 100 most influential people in the world. And on September 9th, 2022, she became Princess of Wales when her husband was created Prince of Wales by Charles III.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's a weird way to... I thought you like used your own word there just to be funny, but that's really how it was written. It was created. Yeah, that's weird. You'd think it would be crowned. And since we kind of already read about William, we can move on to this next topic. So if any of you spend time on social media, you've probably seen a post about this already, but this is something that I wanted to bring up because we're now seeing the re-emergence of the hunger stones. So these are stones that were installed in the riverbeds of some of these rivers during a hunger and famine crisis. Of course, there were various reasons for some of these things, but it says on the stone, if you see this, weep. In other words, bad times are coming. And so they kind of installed that to warn people. So let's read a little bit about this. A hunger stone, in German, Hungerstein, is a type of hydrological landmark common in Central Europe. Hunger stones serve as famine memorials and warnings and were erected in Germany and in ethnic German settlements throughout Europe in the 15th and 19th centuries. These stones were embedded into the river during droughts to mark the water level as a warning to future generations that they have to endure famine-related hardships if the water sinks to this level again. One famous example is the Elbe River in Dessen, Czech Republic. Has, when du mich seint, dann wein. If you see me, weep. Carved into it as a warning. Many of these stones featured carvings or other artwork were erected following the hunger crisis of 1816 through 1817 caused by the eruptions of the Tambora volcano. In 1918, a hunger stone on the bed of the Elbe River near Dessen became exposed during a period of low water coincident with the wartime famines of World War I. Similar hunger stones in the river were uncovered again during droughts in 2018 and in 2022. So here are actually didn't realize there were so many. Wow. So here are some of the known hunger stones. One in the Danube, which is visible at water level of 95 centimeters. The stone is located 95 meters above sea level and is the last such remaining stone in the vicinity. The other ones were demolished when the riverbank path was built. So it's kind of interesting that if they would come through and destroy one of these, what a disservice they'd be doing to some future generation that would be, otherwise warned. So, as many as there are, there apparently used to be more. Then, of course, we have the one here, the Elbe, that we were reading about. Another one here, a few more in the Elbe. This one here is a stone with the number 1666 on it, 1666. That would coincide with Sabbatai Zeti, I think, the guy that tried to say he was the Christ, and he started some like debaucherous offshoot of Judaism or something like that. It was pretty crazy, actually. But Sabbatai Zeti, I think is his name. Anyway, a really weird rabbit hole for that year right there. But yeah, hunger stones were apparent then, and we got stones again, more years. So this is something that's happened a lot. Clearly, there's some type of hydrological cycle going on here, and just like I said, this time of Shemitah, But when we read about Joseph, there were 7 years of plenty and then 7 years of famine. So it seems like there are these cycles that kind of occur, it seems. But humans don't live very long. So, we tend to forget these cycles a lot of times. Here's several on the Elbe. My. The Elbe is just full of these things. So, yeah, here we go. Here's a different river. The Moselle, the Mundusee. This one, actually, I'm not sure. Yeah, Germany. The Rhine, another German Rhine again. Weser. So it seems like all these are Germanic. Year 1115, number of hunger stones marked. So it goes all the way back to 1115, year 1115. Goodness sakes. But you see, it was pretty low up until 1904, where it spiked at 5. But then again, it spikes up to 7, 2015, and then up to 6 in 2018. So it's pretty cool. I can see why it's getting so much, so many shares online, because, it's happening again. This only goes up to 2018, and yet they're showing up again in 2022. So somebody needs to, this wiki page is a little bit behind compared to the Prince of Wales one. So somebody could go in here and add that.
That's funny. Yeah, they will update the important stuff. This is apparently not so much.
So anyway, I just wanted to share that. I know it's a little bit macabre and a weird artifact, but it is a sign of the times. So anyway, share that information if you like. But that's just a reminder to be, try to be prepared. Not be so reliant on the government. Don't be so reliant on man, use the times of plenty to prepare for those times of famine. Speaking of rivers drying up, so we've kind of talked about this topic in the past, but the river Euphrates is drying up too. And this is perhaps a little more dire of an issue, because the famine we're seeing in today's world is for the Word of God, and it talks about how people will hunger and thirst for it. And I think that's one thing we can all agree upon. It's like, especially in the New Age community, it seems like a lot of folks are hungry for spirituality, And I can see that as a strength, but at the same time, it can be a devastating weakness. So what we see with the depletion of the Euphrates River is that the 4 horsemen are imprisoned under the Euphrates River. So when this river dries up, we're supposed to see war, famine, pestilence, and the tyrant, apparently, that will be on the white horse. So, these sorts of things are rather important, in my opinion, and so I wanted to be sure to go ahead and share this. And there are some biblical references too that I think this article contains, so we'll be able to cite. Yeah, there's a few there. Good. So without further delay, let me go ahead and start right here with the 7 vials. So there are 7 vials in God's word. The 5th vial is poured on the seat of the beast, and his kingdom was full of darkness. That's Revelation 16:10. And what beast are we talking about? Well, there's 2 beasts of Revelation 13, which are symbolic of Satan and his kingdom. We got the beast of the sea and the beast of the earth. It's the beast of the sea. That's who the mark of the beast is kind of associated with. The 5th vial is poured out during the tribulation, specifically at or just after the midst of the week. So again, remember that reference to the 7-year period from 2017 to 2023. Well, you could kind of consider that a week, I guess, if it were looking at it 7 years wise. So in the middle of the week would be kind of when this was expected to happen, if that were the true measure there. So that's just something to consider, if indeed that's the tribulation. No doubt this will be brought about due to the testimony of the saints and the 2 witnesses. Again, that's their opinion they're adding there. And so the Euphrates River in the Bible. And so that we'll find this in Revelation 16:12. And the 6th angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. So what could this is a very loaded phrase here. The way, which, by the way, do you know, by the way, do you know the meaning of the name Putin, Aaron?
I do not know.
It happens to be way or path.
Guess I could have guessed.
Which I thought was kind of interesting. So anyway, so you could, I'm not saying that it's of course not written this way in the text, but let's just reread that. And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way Putin of the kings of the east might be prepared. Just interesting to kind of read it that way, because it does mean that. So are we going to see like a real army march over the Euphrates? And what does that kind of imply? The removal of a hedge of protection, the unleashing of these plagues, has God's judgment been provoked? These sorts of things come to mind. The prophecy we just read is merely symbolic in nature. Think about it. Kings or leaders of nations no longer need a river to dry up in order for their armies to cross it. They have planes to fly over it, boats to float over it, and the bridges to drive over it. Well, I don't know. I mean, we see it happening right now. Another thing to consider, too, with this context here is that there's also a reference to, in Isaiah 11, let me put a reference here for that. It might be verse 14, actually. I can't remember exactly which verse, but it talks about the Spirit shaking its hand over the uttermost tongue of Egypt. So, this is not the only waterway being dried up, and that one's being split into 7 streams so that people could go over it dry shod. So here we have the uttermost parts of Egypt being made basically so that people could walk over it. And then here we got the Euphrates doing the same thing so that the kings of the east might be prepared. And so I think we should take some of these things into consideration, maybe look at it through the context of, well, does it have something to do with the second Exodus? Is a way being prepared? Who are these kings of the east? Does this refer to the 10 crowns on the dragon's head? Is that what we're talking about here? So, things to consider. This person continues here with some symbology here. As rivers divide states and nations today, the river Euphrates divided Israel and Babylon. This would become a symbolic line between righteous and unrighteous. So remember when we were reading the Psalms earlier, which again are in tune with the time of year that we're in. Because after all, we visited the link for today, and that was the suggested Psalms, and it was talking about Sennacherib and Nebuchadnezzar. And so I think that this is very timely in that regard. I say that as God told Abraham, his family would inherit the land from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates. We get that reference in Genesis 15:18. That describes the land west of the Euphrates River, the land of Israel, where the Israelites live. Since the Israelites were God's chosen people, west of the Euphrates River can be considered the righteous land, the righteous side of the river. Deuteronomy 7:6 is a reference there. The Israelites were chosen by God to bring his word to the world, though they continually fell into sin themselves. So let me share. That was a good chunk of scripture there. So let me just drop these real quick. Okay, now east of the Euphrates River, we primarily have the unrighteous land of Babylon. This was the heathen nation full of idolatry and certainly symbolic of Satan, which again, Satan is a general term for all fallen spirits, not just one. means the adversary or the left-hand path. Again, the Psalms are talking about those who did things by their own power or their own ability and were proud of it, also fall into this bucket, technically speaking, by definition. At the same time, Babylon was actually located on both sides of the Euphrates River, though primarily to the east of it. Biblically speaking, when the Euphrates dries up, essentially the line between righteous and unrighteous becomes blurred or is no longer present. So this would kind of be the implication, is that once that river dries up, there's no difference between Israel and whom they were being divided from. So when we've read in the past about like the book of Maccabees or what was it? During the time of the Greek occupation, this was a good example of Hellenization, when the society had become lukewarm and mixed. And so it was all blurred. There was no difference. And for some people that are sighing and crying about the abominations that are being done, it could be argued that they were living in hell because they're living in a Hellenized society. As God's people, they are surrounded by sin, quite literally living in hell in a sense. So depending on where you're at, you could kind of feel like that right now for some people, I'm sure. In 2 Timothy 3:1-7 and Isaiah 5:20, we are told that in the last days men would become wicked and people will call evil good and good evil. We see these things today, but the events of the sixth vial are reserved for tribulation. About the word tribulation here, while I was in my water education training today, we were talking about tributaries, and I had the epiphany that a tributary is paying tribute to the main stem of the waterway. So much the same way, when we would go to the temple and bring our fruits, we would be bringing tribute to the temple. In much the same way, water tributaries feed the main stem. People would bring their tribute to the temple to feed the priests, and of course, in some cases, they were providing sacrifices. But so this is where tithing kind of comes from in that regard. Let's see here. History. This right here might be good because it's bringing up Cyrus. Historically, Cyrus and the Persians, Second Kingdom, diverted the Euphrates River in order to bring the water level down, which helped them to conquer Babylon. Wow, can you imagine moving a river to conquer a nation? That's crazy. Anyway, remember, Babylon was located on both sides of the Euphrates River, which made this tactic possible. Now, remember, Cyrus conquers Babylon and then allows the people to come out of captivity within Babylon and rebuild the temple. So, again, the time we're living in now could see a type of repeat, something similar to this. In 539 BCE, the empire fell to the Persians under Cyrus the Great at the Battle of Opis. Babylon's walls were impregnable, and so the Persians cleverly devised a plan whereby they diverted the course of the Euphrates River so that it fell to a manageable depth. While the residents of the city were distracted by one of the great religious feast days, the Persian army waded the river and marched under the walls of Babylon unnoticed. Wow. So kind of think about the when Christ refers to the time of Noah, and it was like they were eating and drinking and marrying and, giving and taking in marriage until the day the rain came and took them all away. The flood came. So it's kind of like that, except in this way, the flood was an invading army. But they were, blissfully unaware. This historical account reminds me of the prophecy yet to be fulfilled in Jeremiah 51 concerning Babylon. And then they refer to the present here. I am reminded of the article in 2018, which read, "The Tigris-Euphrates basin is losing groundwater faster than any other place on Earth except India." That's that's concerning. The Euphrates will soon be reduced to a barren, dusty riverbed, and countless Iraqis who depend on it will find their very survival jeopardized. This is a crisis, he said, but nobody is paying attention to it. Well, I could agree with that, because this is definitely not getting any kind of focus right now. This person goes on to explain that while I opened by explaining Revelation 16:20 is symbolic, that is not to say that God will not send us a physical sign. Well, I'm glad you concede. Something we can see with our own eyes in reference, prophetically speaking, and considering where we are today. I found this to be of an interesting read, they say. And so they go ahead and share this link. So I'll drop the link that they're talking about. So remember, this one's dated back to, this one's 8/2021. Okay, so now we're getting to this part where the kings of the east crossing over. So now we can bring our mind back to Revelation 16:12. Why is the Euphrates River dried up symbolically in Revelation? So the kings of the east can cross over. Who are the kings of the east then? First, we must understand the word east means rising of light, which is the rising of the sun from the east. So this does not necessarily mean these kings will literally come from the east. Interesting. Remember, we are dealing with prophecy and symbology. The whole world lieth in wickedness, not just part of it. They're quoting some things here. Further, one of Satan's many names is Lucifer, which means morning star, which also references the sun, the rising light. Understanding that this tells us the kings of the east, the kings of the rising of light, are the kings of the morning star. They are the kings of Satan, the clay kings of the sixth kingdom from Daniel 2:33-45. So they're suggesting here that the toes of the statue in Daniel 2, where Nebuchadnezzar has a dream of the metal statue, the feet are of clay mixed with iron. And that also coincides with they're trying to mix the seed of man with their own. So, of course, that jives with what we're seeing now. So they're talking about the 7 heads and 10 horns. Well, you could consider these 10 horns to be the 10 toes of the statue as well. So that's what they're saying here. So they're insinuating, I think, that these 10 toes are considered kings of the morning star. I feel like we're getting close to the time. Are we?
We are 5 minutes to the 2-hour mark.
Oh,
so 5 minutes till 8 your time.
Good intuition. Do you have anything else you want to mention before we run out of time? I don't want to read over top of any last words you had.
No, I don't. Like I said, I'll have more announcements come in, and we'll try to do some more live stuff. We'll definitely try to get back on track with our Solomon report on a weekly basis. But again, I do have some cross country and swimming going on, but that'll settle down soon.
Satan will make a covenant with these kings at the beginning of the tribulation, the beginning of the final week of Daniel's 70 weeks. So remember, what did we have happen recently under Trump? The Abraham Accords. So please take into consideration that within this 7-year period, we have had those types of things occur also. So it's checking a lot of boxes, if you will. So for the river Euphrates to also be drying up shortly after a covenant was made like this, it's almost suggesting, oh, okay, you want to make this covenant, this Abraham Accords? Well, all right, how about the Euphrates gets dried up and now an army marches in and conquers you? So there are precedents for this kind of thing already. And that's where the pride, is budding and blossoming. And this is, the parable of the fig tree is as such that a great wind's going to shake it and all the fruit's going to fall out of it. Untimely, it says. So it won't really reach fruition. It's not going to reach ripeness. And that same great wind that shakes the fig tree is the same one that dries up the Euphrates, the same one that smites the river in the uttermost parts of Egypt. So we do see this great wind spoken of many times. And then also, I think in Revelation 7, it's talking about the kings of the east here and a winds. Well, we see the angel from the east show up when this king rises up, and that angel gives him the order, hey, you can't touch any green thing, no trees, no grass, no servants of the Most High that have the mark of the living God on their forehead. And then that becomes the king of the four corners, which we've covered that topic in the past. And that's the king of the world, the king of the four corners. And that's a title that goes all the way back to the Sumerians. I think King Cyrus might have been the last one to have that title, actually. And he was referred to as the anointed of God, his anointed cherub. So, you know, a Cyrus-type character going across the Euphrates with an army, you know, that could fit the bill here because there's already a precedent for that. Now, what could make somebody want to do that, right? What could make somebody want to march on them? Well, with the energy crisis that we're seeing evolve here in Europe, there's going to be a big, quite literally a power vacuum. Only it's going to be energy, not necessarily political power, which that will come later, I think. But they're going to want to probably fill that with Israel is going to want to rise to the occasion. The United States is going to want to rise to the occasion to try and meet the demand for Europe, because as winter approaches, they're going to need more gas. And of course, if you've been following the news, you may know that Europe has sanctioned Russia to the point that they no longer have any gas imports, or, you know, so they're going to freeze this winter if they don't solve this problem fast. And so I think that what we're going to see now is, just like we read about Leviathan earlier too in the Psalms. Well, off the coast of Israel, we'll find the Leviathan gas fields. And so I think that what we're going to see is we're going to be tapping into the Leviathan now for power. So again, this dragon giving power to the Antichrist, that sort of thing playing out, kind of just makes me think of things like the Whale's Red Dragon, Leviathan gas fields, you know, these sorts of dynamics. So I would say pay attention to the United Kingdom and Israel right now, and see if maybe the dragon has anything to do with that. Because they're all going to want to be clamoring for a political solution to this energy crisis. So just something to pay attention to. But we're at the 8 o'clock hour. Well, 8 o'clock Eastern, that is.
Yes, we made it to our 2-hour mark, and I will be getting my children over to Grandma and Grandpa's. Did you have anything else you wanted to mention or announce before we close it out?
Yeah, Yasin here is mentioning the CME predictions. So go back and look at the Carrington event before things were really electronic. They did have telegraph lines, which did catch fire when this happened. So there was a lot of energy put out at the time when this occurred. But that was probably the last great example of that kind of a phenomena. And we're probably due for another one. So consider that if the Pokemon Jibby Jab Jab snake venom bite, you know what I'm talking about, if that has any kind of electronic component to it, think about what that could be doing to you if the entire Earth got bathed suddenly in CME solar flare. Because we got to remember, it does talk about in Scripture how the first destruction occurred with water, but the second will be with fire. And I've always speculated that maybe the moon poured its water off onto the Earth, and so the sun might pour its fire onto the Earth next. So we should really consider the possibility that might happen. So if you have that junk in you, again, we were talking about earlier when the Spirit was being poured out on Earth, it was going to judge the wicked. So it may not even bother us. It might only hurt the people. I mean, after all, when the Carrington event occurred, it didn't hurt people. It just hurt electronics. So, but if everybody's electronic, quote unquote, what will it do to them? The Bible talks about grievous sores and wounds forming on people. So we might see some crazy stuff happen if that CME prediction holds some weight there, Anyway, that's all I have. Thank you all for joining us, spending time and space with us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for taking this kind of time to do your research, and we will try to get back to weekly. And as you guys know, even in the past, sometimes it wasn't weekly, but we tried. So we will try to not take a 2 or 3 month hiatus, however long it was, again.
Has it really been that long, dude?
It's been at least 2
Man.
months, yeah.
Well, yes. Anyway, we'll do our best.
All right.
But try to remind us, because it does help. It motivates me to know that people are wanting to participate and listen. So, if you happen to catch us online and, hey, he's still at it, helps to motivate us.
It does help because, I don't have the Discord anymore. I don't have the big channel. So to me, I don't know if anyone's that interested anyway. So I do know some people are, but it does help because I do get a little down about it. So with that, I guess we shall bid each other adieu for the night, sir.
Adieu, adieu, adieu. I'm going to go have dinner with my brother. Thank you all. God bless you. And don't take the Pokemon.
That's right. And happy birthday to him. And God bless you. And have a wonderful Shabbat. Good night.
I kept my head low and I walked that narrow road as mighty men roamed who devoured both house and home. But I won't forget that day you made yourself known. You said the end has come for men, but hang tight to me with your family. You're the ark I run to from the start, and I will use my life to make you known. 40 days and 40 nights so long. They call me crazy, but that deluge just fades.